May the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be always acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, friends, it is officially full on back to school time right now. And for families with little ones, that means, stocking up on things like crayons and paper and glue sticks. But for families with older kids, back to school often means setting up a dorm room. Now, the dorm phase frequently involves putting together furniture. Those supplementary bookcases and storage tables that you hope will last at least a couple of years. And this means that perhaps this very day, parents and students on campuses across the country are discovering in real time that many furniture manufacturers fail to provide coherent, effective assembly directions. So, say what you want about IKEA, but those people know how to write directions. They are good. Everyone else, not so much. Now, I know that there are some people who delight in throwing out the instruction sheets. They love figuring out everything on their own like it's a challenge. I am not one of those people, okay? I want to get the job done as quickly and as efficiently as possible because instructions, when they work, exist to help us, to get us from point A, a box of jumbled parts, to point B, a nifty computer hutch with minimal friction. Now, in our gospel today, Jesus is talking to his followers about the law that was given by Yahweh to Israel as a nascent nation. The law instructed God's people how to live, how to honor Yahweh and exist together in a holy, healthy, and purposeful way. The law provided guidance for Israel from how they should worship to what they should eat day in and day out. Now, to compare God's law to bookshelf instructions is basically blasphemous, okay? I'm owning that, I admit it. But there are a few illustrative parallels here. You see, Yahweh gave the law to guide Israel, to shape them from a wandering band of men, women, and children in the desert into a holy, ordered nation, to teach them how to live and be faithful to Yahweh and provide an example, a living example of God's goodness to the entire world. It was a wonderful set of instructions. The law is a good and a powerful gift. And Jesus, a faithful Jew, studied and honored it. So why, we must ask, time and again did the teachers of the law find fault with the way that he lived? In the verses just prior to our gospel passage, the Pharisees accused Jesus of failing to ritually wash his hands as the law required. In fact, they accused him of disregarding the rules that they spent so much of their time and energy upholding down to the most minute detail. And Jesus continued to test the boundaries of the law when he dealt with the Canaanite woman, whom Israelites would clearly label an outsider. The woman didn't fall within the bounds of God's chosen people, either by birth or lifestyle. For Jesus to recognize and proclaim her as one who was faithful would shock the Jewish establishment. Yet elsewhere in Matthew's gospel, Jesus proclaims outright that he did not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. So what gives? Why the radically different perspectives? Well, Jesus clues us in with his own words. You know, his focus, his interpretive hermeneutic, as scholars might say, is that the law is primarily about the heart. Jesus' words suggest that it is our hearts that his Father is most concerned with, because our actions flow from that place where our deepest thoughts, affections, and intentions reside. The law is designed to guide our hearts to love God and neighbor. But in practice, the law serves to show us just how far we fall short in that love, just how much we all need God's grace, forgiveness, and help. Now, make no mistake, the religious teachers of Jesus' day knew and taught about God's grace and loving kindness and forgiveness. They knew loving God and neighbor was of primary importance. But many of them, just like us today, fell into focusing on appearances, on observable actions, judging others, as we often do as well, by our own set of do's and don'ts, deciding for our own sake who's in and who's out. And often they turned, as we all do, God's guidelines for living in love as a means of keeping ourselves safe and secure, assuring ourselves that we're okay, and as a means to keep the difficult and scary parts of life at bay. Now, friends, safety and security are good and necessary things, and God knows this. But Jesus' priority is living this life to the full and loving others with abandon, knowing that we will make mistakes, but trusting in Jesus' faithfulness to heal and redeem us and to make all things right in the end. God didn't create us just to follow rules, no matter how wonderful they are. We exist to love God and one another. Loving others is messy business. In fact, it led Jesus to the cross. But the love of God also resurrected him to new life for Jesus himself, for you, and for me, and for the whole world. And that, dear friends, is the point. So do we throw out all the rules? Rip up all those flimsy bookshelf instructions in disgust? No, rules and laws and even those instruction sheets can guide us towards what is good. But as followers of Jesus, we must all admit freely that we miss the mark when it comes to God's perfection, and learn to live trusting first and foremost in his goodness, his grace, his forgiveness. We do our best to love one another, even when things get messy, when, not if, because when we do, haltingly and imperfectly, with God's help, we discover our deepest joy. We share God's loving kindness with the whole world, and we learn to live like Jesus. Amen.